The cameras were still rolling, the lights were still blazing across the Geneva conference hall, officials were still whispering into earpieces, and yet somehow, in the middle of what was supposed to be Meghan Markle's biggest international comeback moment, her name quietly vanished from the closing panel schedule like she had never been there in the first place. Not delayed, not moved, removed. And according to people who were allegedly inside that building, Meghan realized it only minutes before the final segment was about to begin. That is the moment this entire story exploded behind the scenes. Because what the public saw outside in Geneva was awkward enough already. But what allegedly happened after the camera stopped rolling is the part palace watchers cannot stop dissecting. For weeks, this event had reportedly been positioned inside Meghan's camp as a defining reset moment. Not another celebrity podcast, not another lifestyle launch, not another Montecito soft-focused Instagram post with candles and jam jars and carefully staged family warmth. No, this was supposed to be global, diplomatic, serious, the kind of stage that finally forced critics to stop calling her a Hollywood activist and start calling her an international humanitarian figure. Geneva was supposed to feel bigger than royal gossip. That was the strategy. That was the image operation. That was the dream. And on paper, it looked perfect. A major international gathering tied to global health conversations, high-profile officials, international press, Ango representatives, European cameras, security presence, formal staging, Meghan standing beside major institutional figures in tailored Armani while delivering a carefully polished speech about digital safety, emotional trauma, and protecting families online. The optics were designed to scream one thing and one thing only: stateswoman. The footage spreading online afterward was brutal. Absolutely brutal. People walking past without stopping. Tourists taking pictures of the broken chair monument instead of the stage. Cars moving normally through the square. A woman pushing a stroller, barely glancing toward the event. At one point, viewers online started joking that the loudest thing in the crowd was the fountain water behind the cameras. And once those clips hit social media, the entire mood surrounding the event shifted within hours, because suddenly the conversation was no longer about Meghan's speech. It became about humiliation. And insiders allegedly say organizers noticed the backlash immediately. According to whispers circulating through royal commentary circles, the original internal schedule for the Geneva gathering included Meghan participating in a prestigious closing discussion panel later that evening alongside senior campaign figures and international representatives. That panel would have allowed her to stay visible longer, network privately, take final photographs with delegates, and most importantly, leave the event looking central to the mission instead of peripheral to it. But somewhere between the empty crowd clips going viral and the international press beginning to mock the turnout, something reportedly changed backstage. Quietly. Very quietly. No dramatic announcement. No microphone statement. No public confrontation. Just a revised running order circulating among staff phones. And allegedly, Meghan's name was no longer attached to the closing discussion. Now here is where the story becomes pure royal gossip gasoline, because the timing could not have looked worse. By the time the final panel discussions were beginning inside the Geneva venue, social media was already comparing Meghan's appearance to Princess Catherine's recent Italy visit just days earlier. And the contrast was devastating. Catherine arriving to cheering crowds, Catherine greeting locals in Italian, Catherine surrounded by organic public warmth. Then suddenly cut to Geneva footage of Meghan speaking to a visibly thin audience while pedestrians wandered behind the cameras like they had accidentally walked into someone else's conference setup. And according to several commentators following the event closely, organizers allegedly became nervous that the closing panel itself was about to become overshadowed by the backlash narrative consuming social media in real time. Because this is the thing about elite international events nobody says out loud. Reputation panic spreads fast inside those rooms. Extremely fast. Especially when cameras are involved. Especially when donors are involved. Especially when institutions are trying to protect credibility. The second an event starts trending for the wrong reasons, people inside begin distancing themselves almost automatically. One commentator claimed staffers were seen hurrying through backstage corridors while phones were being checked repeatedly. Another rumor suggested seating arrangements near the final discussion area were quietly adjusted minutes before guests entered. One particularly explosive whisper even claimed Meghan was briefly left waiting in a private holding area while organizers finalized changes behind closed doors. But the reason this story exploded is because people watching the footage afterward noticed something strange almost immediately. Meghan's visibility suddenly dropped after the speech itself. The post-event coverage became fragmented. Some media outlets focused only on the speech clips. Others Others barely mentioned her afterward at all. And several official event photos circulating later in the evening noticeably emphasized institutional figures rather than Meghan herself. And according to one especially vicious rumor spreading through online gossip communities, Meghan allegedly became emotional once she realized the closing panel had moved forward without her involvement being highlighted the way she expected. One insider-style account even described visible frustration behind the scenes and claimed aides were attempting to calm tensions before departure arrangements were finalized. What made the Geneva situation spiral from awkward into genuinely damaging was not just the allegedly empty crowd or the rumors about the closing panel, it was the feeling spreading across social media that Meghan had once again walked into a carefully staged, serious global moment only for the internet to drag it straight back into celebrity spectacle within hours. That is the part insiders reportedly did not anticipate, because according to people watching the reaction unfold in real time, the backlash became less about one event and more about a growing public exhaustion with what critics call manufactured importance. And then came the detail that allegedly pushed tensions backstage completely over the edge. Several online commentators began claiming that organizers were frustrated the Geneva conversation itself had become overshadowed by Meghan's personal branding rather than the humanitarian cause attached to the event. Suddenly, journalists were discussing her Armani outfit, her body language, her Instagram activity, her daughter, her security convoy, her facial expressions. Everything except the actual campaign message the event was supposed to promote. And according to gossip circulating afterward, some officials allegedly felt blindsided by just how aggressively the Sussex media storm swallowed the event whole, because international humanitarian gatherings are usually dry, controlled, predictable. They are not supposed to become viral internet spectacle filled with TikTok mockery and side-by-side comparisons to Princess Catherine tours. But that is exactly what Geneva became within less than 24 hours. And honestly, that comparison may have been the most painful part for Meghan personally, because people inside royal commentary circles were openly calling it the contrast disaster. Catherine smiling naturally through huge crowds in Italy, while Meghan stood in front of scattered attendees in Geneva. Catherine appearing effortless while Meghan appeared hyper-managed. Catherine looking warmly received while Meghan looked isolated behind security barriers and camera angles. It was relentless. Every platform started feeding the comparison back into the algorithm again and again and again until the Geneva event itself almost disappeared underneath it. And somewhere inside that storm, rumors about Harry's absence began exploding too, because people immediately noticed he was nowhere near Geneva during what was supposedly one of Meghan's biggest international appearances in years. No supportive arrival photos, no backstage images, no emotional couple moment after the speech, nothing. And that silence created another wave of speculation all on its own. Suddenly, commentators were asking whether the Sussexes were intentionally separating their brands because joint appearances were no longer helping public perception. Others went even further, whispering about private tensions and strategic distancing behind closed doors. Now combine all of that pressure together for a second. The empty crowd clips, the criticism online, the alleged panel removal rumors, the comparisons to Catherine, the non-stop marriage speculation, the awkward headlines, the American media barely focusing on the speech itself. Then imagine walking backstage after trying to deliver the performance of your life while your phone is reportedly exploding with viral clips mocking the event in real time. That is why the Left in Tears narrative suddenly gained traction so fast, because whether literal tears happened or not almost stopped mattering. The emotional collapse story fit the atmosphere perfectly. The internet had already decided Geneva was not a triumph. It was a humiliation story. And once the public locks into that narrative, every detail afterward gets interpreted through that lens. Even Meghan's exit from the venue became part of the gossip machine. Observers online claimed she appeared unusually tense while leaving the event area. Others dissected clips frame by frame, insisting her smile looked forced. One royal account even claimed her team moved photographers farther away during departure shots to avoid capturing awkward reactions from nearby attendees. Again, impossible to fully verify. But by that point, the rumors were feeding themselves. And the most brutal part? The next morning, the world had already moved on emotionally from the actual Geneva cause itself. Nobody was debating policy. Nobody was discussing the campaign goals. The entire internet conversation became centered around Meghan personally and whether the event had exposed a deeper problem with the Sussex brand. Because this is the uncomfortable truth hanging over the entire story now. Every time Meghan tries to step into a serious international figure role, the celebrity side of the brand seems to overpower the humanitarian side almost instantly. The clothes become bigger than the cause. The optics become bigger than the speech. The backstage gossip becomes bigger than the mission. And critics argue that Geneva may have exposed that contradiction more brutally than ever before, especially if the rumors about the closing panel are even partially true. Because if organizers truly did quietly reduce her visibility after seeing the reaction online, then that would mean something far bigger than one awkward event. It would suggest institutions themselves are becoming nervous about attaching major global campaigns too closely to Sussex controversy. And if that perception spreads inside elite international circles, Geneva may end up being remembered as the moment Meghan's carefully planned global stateswoman image hit a wall in public view. One thing is certain, though, the footage is not disappearing. The clips are still circulating. The comparisons are still spreading. And somewhere behind palace walls, Hollywood offices, and international PR firms, people are still analyzing how a glamorous Geneva appearance designed to relaunch Meghan onto the world stage somehow turned into one of the most uncomfortable royal gossip firestorms of the year.